Hey, this is Adam Brown, and I'm back at it with another episode of Consumer Packaged. And today I thought I would answer some of the most common questions I get generally about why I started Sircle Media and what makes us different, or why would we benefit a brand if they're in the market looking for social media help. So here are actual questions that I often get. First and foremost, Adam, what made you start Sircle Media? What problem are you solving, right? So this is a question about positioning. I just saw the market 15, 16 years ago, and I was like, there's two problems at play. There's agencies that just stink. Most of them started good at something, ended up being mediocre at everything because they thought it should be an AOR or an agency of record model. They should start diversifying and doing a lot of things, and just started growing away from their core competency, or just needed to go after more business to pay the bills and just were hungry, and so they were okay sacrificing some of the original quality or maybe some of the original expertise that got them there. So this agency model was sort of broken and needed to be fixed, and relying on agencies became very frustrating. I had lived it. I was on the client side for a decade, and I saw that most agencies didn't have their clients' interest in mind, didn't really care often, not everybody, but some, and a lot of times just weren't built for the actual expertise that the brand or the business was looking for. And on the flip side, brands had an option of hiring internally. The problem with hiring internally is that social media is a full-time job, and it's a full-time job of many people. It goes across disciplines. I've never met one human that was a fifth degree black belt in social platform execution, copywriting and distribution, influencers, paid social, brand collabs, understanding how to leverage retail media, understanding how to work with all the moving pieces, and then put that all into a cauldron and mix it up, and then be able to surface the CPG industry. A lot of times the brands were hiring somebody for social media, they were young, they were inexpensive, and also inexperienced. So you gave this one person all of these roles and responsibilities, and even if they were great, they were just set up for failure because it's just not one human. So I was like, okay, if I can create a social media agency that is a group approach, because I think it's a group that's needed to execute effectively on social, with a four seasons approach, like a four seasons hotel type of approach to agency management, and specific expertise focus and specific channel focus, I would be onto something special. I created Sircle Media, and we've been doing that and executing on that ever since. Next question. What does a social media agency actually do for a consumer brand day to day? So when it comes to Sircle Media, we are full Monty running social. The way to think about it is, if you were going to hire Jane Doe to run your social, which wouldn't work, as I mentioned before, and so you really want somebody to execute across social, you need somebody who is able to plan your copy and plan your creative, both what you make and what you curate from the world, fan photos, tag photos, influencers, founder-led content, whatever it is, and put that all together with a brand strategy focused messaging plan for the brand. Now it's got to be distributed, so they need to know the platforms of the day, how to effectively post on those platforms, tips and tricks, what actually works. They have to pay attention to where industry platforms are going, what are some new products they have, how can you be an early adopter. They have to be open to experimenting and testing and doing all these things. So they need to have the freedom to do all that, while at the same time you need to be creating content. So it needs to be cross-discipline content. It can't just be a photo studio. It can't just be, we have a graphic designer, package designer on our team. They'll just make our creative. It can't just be some live video guy that meets you in a Target and films you for an hour. It needs to be a cross-discipline. You need to have access to all these different tools, because different platforms and at different times will reward you for those. So there's all of this content creation across different skill sets, so it's many different people, and understanding how to manage them and keep their creative on brand message. So that's a major skill set in and of itself. It's a little bit brand management, it's a little bit art direction. That role is also needed, which we offer in an outsourced capacity. Then you have influencer management, how to work with gifted influencers, how to work with paid influencers, who are the right ones to work with, how to understand influencer marketing from a top of funnel, mid funnel, down funnel point of view. How do you leverage the other tools like Aisle and Arcard and other shopper marketing tools that are out there in addition to working with influencers? How do you know how to negotiate rights usage so you can use the creative as ideally as you please? Whitelisting access so you can run ads on their account, even understanding what whitelisting is. which then segues to paid social, like understanding paid social management, how to work with boosting and spark ads, which is essentially boosting on TikTok, how to understand how to do dark ads where you're creating something that's like a post but it doesn't show up on your feed so you can experiment and test, and how you're doing full-blown campaigns with creative derivatives, targeting derivatives, geo-fenced, hyper-local, retail velocity derivatives. Like understanding all of that, I think, is a big part of social media. Having a Rolodex of other brands that you can work with for giveaways, partnerships, or maybe even like co-branded capsule collections. Like those are very hot right now. Understanding how to find them, source them, negotiate them, and then manage them in a way that is on brand message and that helps put the brand message forward in a concise way that ties in with everything else. I also think social media needs to pay attention to all the other digital platforms, because social media is the comms chief. And your social media manager is running your social, that's obvious, but then thinking about how will this now show up on an Instacart ad? How will this show up on a Target PDP video? How are we showing up on Amazon A+ content? So I think a social media agency or a social media stack that you have has to be super well versed, A++ in all of those things, and then also just have the nuance and savvy on how to work with humans, have people skills, and just how to get the most bang for your buck, because usually you're always going to want more by investing less, right? And so when you do that, you really need to have somebody who knows how to skip steps, take big gorilla steps as opposed to baby steps. And I think having an agency partner helps you do that, because they're not just working on your brand. Hopefully they're working with many brands in your space, so it just helps shorten the learning curve. It makes sure that you don't step in puddles that maybe other brands have done before. So I think it's actually a big value add and actually a cost savings, because you have a lot of like wrong maze turns reduced by having a partner that understands consumer packaged goods and social media as a combination. What makes an agency that specializes in CPG and beverage different from a generalist agency? I kind of just hit on that, but in the end of the day, you need somebody who like stone cold knows CPG. Like, what is the channel mix? What does a Publix mean versus an Erewhon versus a Kroger versus a Sam's Club? Like, what are all those things? How do you show up in those things? Do you have different formats, different facings? Like, what are we trying to push in those areas? Some of them are going to be higher price. Some of them are going to be lower value or more value, like lower price in different parts of the market, different shoppers, different mindsets, different usage occasions. Like, you have to like really understand CPG and social media. Like, I put myself out there like I'm a CPG founder. I just run an agency. And if you've ever seen my content, you see I talk much more about the CPG industry. Anyone can learn how to post on Instagram, but really understanding Instagram's role in messaging around the goals and the trials and tribulations in the CPG industry is a key unlock. So I think not only do they have to have CPG experience, I think honestly, and that's why I created Sircle this way, it's great to work with an agency that has exclusive CPG beverage focus, or the lion's share. Like, I think it has to be like their primary focus. If they're moonlighting in CPG, I think it's going to be you teaching them a lot about your industry, which again slows things down, causes drag, and actually makes you waste money. So to me, making sure that they are exclusive or hyper focused on CPG and really understand this. So when you're interviewing them, ask them a lot of CPG questions. Don't just ask them social media questions. I think that's a key unlock. What is a common mistake CPG brands make with their social media? I think in general, brands either discount social media, so they have someone junior on it, like a freelancer, or they hire an internal social media manager, so they underinvest, and there's just like opportunity costs, financial costs, they just miss by like not really giving it its proper attention and its proper staffing. Once a brand starts getting going, and maybe they hire a creative director or just a founder that's very like socially driven, I think they waste too much time being too holy and too sacred about creative. I think they sweat every detail, pixel perfect edits. They really think about that, when like they need to be thinking more diversity, experimentation. Things don't need to be perfect, and things don't need to be any one thing, right? I guess the third thing would be a lot of brands are very binary. So it'll be like all very color pop, vibrant, poppy soda 2 years ago. Then it'll be like grainy, cool, real, in-store, UGC, iPhone feeling like sort of like Graza did maybe a year and a half ago. And it's never any one of those things. It's always all the things. So we always encourage brands, take a step back. Remember your goal. Your goal is probably retail velocity. The way to get to retail velocity is strategy. Talk about flavor, talk about macros, talk about usage occasion, whatever it might be, and then rinse and repeat. Get that creative out there in different formats, trying different disciplines, looking at how it's performing, looking at what's resonating, and then starting to double down, and also making sure you're putting paid support behind it. I guess one more thing. A lot of times brands create content, put it out there, and if it doesn't do well, they're like, well, that doesn't work, let's kill it. I think you got to get your habit of using paid social to augment the work that you're doing on your messaging. So you really got to put that out there for a hope of it being consumed. And it doesn't mean it didn't work if it didn't get consumed, because organic reach is so low. So I think massaging it, supporting it, pushing it out a little bit more is something you should be doing. And I think that's a common mistake when they sort of separate out social and paid and analyze social on its own without paid support. Is it better to hire an in-house social media manager or outsource to an agency? It's obviously a loaded question. I am an outsourced agency, so I'm going to lean that way. But usually when I'm speaking to a brand, I'll get a sense of like, who's in your ecosystem now? Like if you have a great social media manager and you love them and you want them on their team, if you don't change the role, you're going to lose them, right? Because rock stars want to work with other rock stars. So they will leave if they just sit as the social media manager and the buck stops with them. Also, they are probably doing too much. You probably have too many responsibilities on their plate, so they're going to burn out. They're not going to want to stay as social media manager for long. So if they're really good and they understand your brand and they're in the weeds and you love them, maybe they become an associate brand manager paired with a social media agency. Or if that person's meant to stay in social and they love social, a lot of times brands will hire us for secondary services. Like we provide an outsourced art department to pair with an internal social media manager. So now you've taken that big chunk of creative and diversified creative and art and science creative and all of that, and you bring that to a team like ours. We have 32 full-time W2 employee creators at Sircle, cross-discipline, magical creative makers, like best in class. I've been recruiting them for over a decade. They come, they stay, they get to work with the best brands in the business, and they get to work with other disciplines, do dual assets, or just learn from other creatives. And so you have this like wonderful ecosystem of creativity happening at Sircle Media. So a brand can tap into that for an outsourced art department to fill that role. Some brands will use us for just an influencer department. So for a fraction of the cost of a PR agency or an internal influencer lead or influencer director, you get access to a best-in-class team that only does it for CPG brands all day long, run by somebody who's been here 6+ years, working on influencer and social execution. You get a team that really understands awareness and retail velocity support for CPG brands when it comes to influencer marketing. So we could play that part of the stack if a brand still wants to have part of it in-house. We also do some strategy work, a little bit of email, some paid social only work. So sometimes we can fill part of the role, but the point is you can't solve all of the role internally, full stop, and definitely not with one person. So you really have to figure out what are your goals and aspirations, what is your budget, and how are you being effective with your dollars, and then answer that question. I would argue 99% of the time, an outsourced solution like us is going to outperform an internal individual or an internal solution for a brand that wants to scale in CPG effectively on social media. And then what should a CPG founder look for when choosing a social media agency? So sort of wrapping this all up, I think they have to have CPG chops. They have to have beverage chops. They have to have spirit chops. Like they have to be deep in your category. So ask them questions. Imagine they're your coworker 3 months from now, and you're just riffing on the spirit category. What's going on? The emergence of non-alc, alt-alc, cannabis. Like how do we think about that? Somebody should be well versed in that and understand how to speak spirits, or understand how to speak beverage, or understand how to speak CPG. So you can have a dialogue, because whatever you do on social is going to be layered with how does that translate in a CPG environment. Even by channel mix, right? To be honest with you, like you can work with a lot of great marketers that are out there in the market, but a lot of them have worked in DTC. And DTC still works with supplements, still works with beauty, apparel. There are categories, DTC is still a thing. DTC is not as much a thing in CPG anymore. So they can speak that language about top of funnel awareness and down funnel conversions, that's great, but can they understand how to support Wegmans? Do they know how to get like boots on the ground retail content? Do they understand that not each individual effort will have a ROAS assigned to it, but the overall thing is brand building for awareness, consideration, and trial at retail? I think they need to know retail velocity's CPG ecosystem, and they can't just be a DTC guy or gal. I think that's really, really important. I also think you should know that you got to get references. Like in an industry like CPG, it's a small incestuous business. You should ask for references, you should ask around. And so it makes that somebody who focuses exclusively on your category has got to do a good job, because word will travel fast. And at Sircle Media, we win a lot of clients. We sometimes lose clients. That's the nature of agency life. But you're not going to find many clients that have left Sircle Media not saying amazing things about the work product, the work attitude, the effort that we put in. Like, we want to be better than the best employee you ever hired, and we hold that standard very, very holy and high at this agency. And so you should ask around for references. You should definitely look at some current CPG work and maybe speak to one of those brands, because they can show you something from 6 years ago, but that's not going to be as relevant as it is from 6 minutes ago. So you have to know that they understand CPG, they understand channel support, and they understand how to support that in a current environment. And so I think you should ask those challenging questions. Make sure they have confidence in their delivery around what they're talking about. Make sure that they understand that consumer packaged goods is different than other industries. Maybe ask them to articulate why and see how they react to that. Because I think you just want a partner that's really in it to win it with you, not just posting on Instagram, but posting on Instagram with intent, understanding TikTok, understanding YouTube Shorts, understanding what the platforms are, how to use them, and how your business can win with them at the helm. That's it for today. I'll see you out in the field.